Soft. That's it, folks.
Very good. Thank you so much. That was good. Yeah, because you're really the big joke in the house. Thank you.
Oh, what's that? I got a joker. Get a big joker. The card.
Alrighty then. So, does anybody else have something they'd like to bring up to the table? I saw somebody back there sneak in. I saw somebody back there sneak in. Yay! And in case you don't know her, I'll let her introduce herself. Thank you so much, Jen. How are you?
I'm Jen. This is Ben. He's your member. We're just gonna sing. If you know it, sing along. I know you do. Just a small town girl living in a lonely world. She took the midnight train going anywhere. Just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. You took the midnight train going anywhere. A singer in a smoky room, the smell of wine and cheap perfume. For a smile they can share the night. It goes on and on and on and on. Strangers waiting up and down the boulevard, their shadows searching in the night. Streetlights, people living just to find emotion, hiding somewhere in the night. Working hard to get my fill. Everybody wants a thrill. Paying anything to roll the dice. It goes on and on and on and on. Some win, some lose, and some are born to sing the blues. But the one thing never ends. It goes on and on and on and on. Strangers waiting up and down the boulevard, their shadows searching in the night. Streetlights, people living just to find emotion, hiding somewhere in the night. Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Streetlights and people. Don't stop believing. Hold on. The streetlights and people. Don't stop.
Thank you so much. Peace.
Oh, no, please, that's important.
I'm Jen, runs that one. A little journey, actually.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And does anybody else have something they would like to bring up here tonight? Anybody else prepare anything? Mel, did you have
We have a flute duet.
That would be beautiful. And for all of you that don't know, Kim is going to play the flute. She is amazing, and I didn't know that Mel also played the flute, so this is going to be quite a treat for me.
We couldn't get this aria worked out as a vocal duet, so we're playing flute. Right? Yes. We're doing solo. All right. We just have to find the music, folks.
Did you put it in?
I guess.
You looked it up, so I'm older than that, and I never did that.
Right.
You can almost face the music.
Solve the problem. Please. Tell a joke, Kim. Spencer, tell a joke.
Oh, let's see here. I got a few more prepared there on my phone, but that's there. Let's see.
I hear you.
Something that's kosher for everybody here. Well, I did hear that it was open mic night tonight, and I had to think to myself, well, what night isn't mic open? I'm sorry, I'll let you, Mike. I told that one to him earlier, and he laughed at me. Let's see here. So you found the music, great. But I have a joke.
Exactly, you're ready.
All right, so I work with my mom at a preschool, and one of the kids, was not listening, and so I told him to come on, put on your shoes, and he said, "What for?" And I said, "No, just 2."
Kim missed it, maybe.
Are you in tune, please? You on?
Yeah.
Going on?
Yes.
No.
That was really beautiful. Next up, I believe we have a reading. Stephen, would you like to bring up your reading?
I need to stand.
Would you like to stand? or sit?
I should have brought a backlit text like Liz.
It's just my phone.
I hope there are some baseball fans in the crowd. It's a baseball story. I wrote it about a year ago, sort of shortly after Trump came to power. I was inspired partly by Philip Roth's novel, The Great American Novel. It's a very, very funny baseball novel, and I really recommend it. But also I found I had a compatriot in Peter Iverson. I can recommend his book, Diamond Stars, a novel of the 1934 All-Star Baseball game. Also, somewhere in the Philip Roth novel, he says something along the lines of, the baseball is, of course, the national game, that's a cliche, but he says the rules of baseball are like the Constitution of the United States. We are founded in some way on those rules and on the layout of the field and generally on the culture of baseball. So here's my story, and I cut it way down. It's about 3 times as long. It's called Bucky the Great and the Foul Ball Affair, but actually ball is in parentheses. So Bucky the Great and the Foul Affair, parentheses for a little bit of ambiguity. Few people know the name Buckminster Bixby, but everyone knows Bucky the Great. 3-time American Most Valuable Player, home run champ 7 years running, twice Triple Crown winner, unforgettable personality, liberator of the game of baseball from strictures that threaten to destroy it along with its enduring American ideals. Unfortunately, his rise to glory was cut short by his tragic death at the height of his powers, which put him in the same league as far as national martyrdom with Lou Gehrig. The Los Angeles Dodgers had sunk into the cellar of the National League West until Bucky raised them up and infused them with an energy and will to win that his performance by itself cannot explain. It was his person, his presence, a smile and a manner that sent the clear message, "You're so lucky to know me. Nothing can stop me." He stood 6'5" and radiated robustness and courage. He was so strong in his casual, jovial manner, his hands in his pockets, his face beaming, irresistible charm, and his whole presence charged with the magnetism of his unmatched statistics. It was impossible to resist him. No story shows his greatness more than the reform which shaped the game of baseball. The famous cheer of the reformers speaks loud and clear. So long, baseball. Hello, Buckyball. Now, I know that many conventional readers who cannot think beyond the rule-bound life will howl at what became the program of baseball liberation. But it's important, especially in the present age, to appreciate the reforms introduced by Bucky. They predicted the renewal now sweeping the country in many other areas. The great baseball firestorm known as Bucky's Revolt started in a tense game with the Philadelphia Phillies. LA had good prospects for the National League pennant and a shot at the World Series. It lagged behind the Phillies by a game and a half in season play, And so the postseason playoff series was played with nerves and passions wound tight. It happened in the 9th inning of Game 3. LA, now trailing Philadelphia by 1 game in the best-of-5 game series, score tied 3-3, bases loaded for Los Angeles. Bucky comes to bat. With a count of 3-2, Bucky sent a towering fly ball to right field. It was of historic length. Scientific measurements later determined that it was the longest ball ever hit out of Dodger Stadium. The right field umpire's call, foul ball. Bucky stopped his progress to first base and headed for the home plate, bat still in hand, with a stride that left no doubt as to his purpose. He exchanged words with the head umpire. There was disagreement between the two. It got fierce. The 4 other umpires were called in. The formidable Dodger manager, Bronco Turnbull, left the dugout. He also had seen the ball as foul, as did the fans and the players of both teams. The right field tower, the ball had cleared the right field tower on the foul side, and so foul ball looked like the right call. A charge, like an electric shock, coursed through the 56,000 fans and both teams when the announcement came that the Dodgers had challenged the call, and the review of the video was in progress. In the meantime, Bucky, Turnbull, and the umpires stood around home plate, kicked at the dirt, and occasionally laughed. The atmosphere was light, and the mood was cheery. After a few minutes, the right field umpire, Ziggy Broadbent, stepped out from the little huddle, marched to the right field baseline, and in a big swooping gesture towards the infield, right knee to the ground, left arm extended, right arm sawing the air like an archer releasing one arrow after another, declared in a voice of brass, "Fair ball!" Pandemonium followed. The LA base runners trotted around the bases to touch home plate. Bucky followed. The Philadelphia bench cleared in an instant. There was no doubt that blood would flow if the call went unreversed. Philly fans stormed the field. LA fans followed. It was a melee like none since George Brett's explosion at the infamous Pine Bar bat call. You really have to be a baseball fan to remember that. While the battle raged, Bucky sauntered to the side of the fray and cleaned his fingernails. The LAPD took the field to hustle the umpire crew off to safety. Emergency medical teams had to treat fans and players bleeding from punches and blows from baseball bats. The Philadelphia pitcher, Koji Fujimitsu, staggering from an apparent heart attack, had to be carried from the field. The Philadelphia coach finally agreed to let the game play out, but declared that he would challenge the call with an appeal to the commissioner of baseball. The Dodgers won the game 7-3 and went on to win the pennant in the World Series. The LA Times and other papers published photographs showing the ball pass to the foul side of the field tower. The headline in the Philadelphia Inquirer read, "Fair is foul and foul is fair." The magnificent height and historic distance of the hit seemed to soften popular attitudes towards the obvious truth. It was a foul ball. The right field umpire, Ziggy Broadbent, admitted later that a talk with Bucky persuaded him to reverse his call. He did not understand the decision himself at the time, and the only explanation he could offer was Bucky had a way about him. Bucky, the 2 coaches, and the 4 umpires were interviewed in a classic series of baseball commission hearings. The commissioner at the time was the fabled Honus McGraw, better known as Rock McGraw because his faith in the rules, regulations, and conventions of baseball was compared by one pundit to the Rock of Gibraltar. Unmovable, In fact, he had discussed the foul ball affair in an op-ed piece for the Boston Globe, in which he famously compared the rules of baseball and the structure of the baseball field to Euclidean geometry and Kepler's 3 laws of planetary motion. After some casual preluding, the questioning started with Commissioner McGraw, putting it hard and straight to all participants. What are we doing here? The ball was foul. Coach Turnbull, it depends on how you understand the concept of foul. McGraw, the hell it does. Turnbull, let's not be hasty here. Remember, there are 4 umpires present who will agree that Bucky's hit was fair. Right, gentlemen? 4 umpires did not agree. Turnbull, these are the best there are. How can you argue? McGraw, what the hell's going on here, Roy? Roy Page, home plate umpire. We've done some rethinking, Mac. The fact is, the game is changing. We gotta change with it or be left behind. The old rules are strangling the game. Ziggy Broadbent. Foul ball lines are limits. They're barriers to greatness. McGraw. Who the hell put an idea like greatness into your hollow head, Ziggy? Just call them the way you see them. Ziggy. The way I see it, Bucky here hits a ball like no one has ever seen before, and we should just act as though it's just another strike, toss it in the waste bin of failed swings. It's a world record. That hit is the greatest thing I've ever seen. What about all the kids who are dreaming of greatness? We should just throw cold water on that dream by calling it foul? Commissioner McGraw. Bucky, maybe you can straighten this out. Are these guys crazy? In fact, Bucky had not spoken a word during the hearing. He had filed his fingernails and whistled softly. Watching him, you would think that there was very little at stake, or possibly that the outcome was so obvious to him that he didn't need to speak. He took his time, put away his fingernail file in a little silver case, then nodded and raised his eyebrows as if to say, what more can I add? They've made the case. Bronco Turnbull. Mac, speaking to McGraw, Commissioner, what we want is simple. We want to restore heroism to the game. Give all the kids at home more, much more to admire. Think about it, Rock. Could there be anything more cowardly than a base on balls? It's a handout. It's a free pass. We're choking in petty regulations and laws. We want freedom. The best in us is being stifled. Skipping over a lot here. Rock, Turnbull still speaking. Rock, I'm telling you, join us. Tear down those towers. Redraw the lines or erase them. Remove the outfield barriers. They've held us down for years. I want open fields. We're free souls longing to realize our true potential. This is America. We think big. We go our own way. We're not bound by petty conventions. Okay, they talk a lot about how they're going to reform baseball. Then comes the great meeting of the 30 owners of the Major League Baseball teams who go into this meeting convinced that this is insanity that's going on and come out deciding in favor of reform. So a reform program is put forward which abolishes bases. It abolishes balls and strikes. A couple other things like that. It makes virtuoso players unnecessary, and it enlivens play a lot. And the owners are drawn to the fact that they don't have to pay millions and millions for really expert pitchers and people who have developed real talent in the sport. He distributed a slate of 10 guidelines for the new game, see Appendix 1. The best known and most discussed of the changes are the replacement of bases with safety zones, larger areas randomly distributed through the field, which guarantee a more fluid progress towards home plate. Baselines are abolished. An out occurs only when a player is tagged directly with the ball. And of course, the foul ball is abolished. It was Bucky triumphant. Bucky himself, who had sat silently in the meeting whistling. By the way, it takes place on the 10th floor of the Plaza Hotel in New York City, facing Manhattan, with a huge crowd of mixed Bucky fans and Bucky haters who get in a great riot. Bucky himself had sat silently in the meeting, whistling, beaming self-confident, and tending to his manicure. He appeared on a balcony, after the decision was announced, he appeared on a balcony of the Champagne Room, magnificent in his old-fashioned baseball uniform, acknowledged the ovation of the crowd by stretching both arms heavenward, each extended diagonally by the length of a baseball bat. This gesture. A monumental human victory sign. He looked for all the world like some Olympian Zeus, raising up his thunderbolts. It was the very pose which would later appear on the special issue Bucky the Great stamp of the U.S. Postal Service. So the game develops according to the new rules, and things seem to be working just great as far as the fans and the owners are concerned. From this point on, through the whole range of players and positions, personality and self-presentation would play a greater role in hiring decisions than the tiresome statistics of fielding, batting average, earned run average, and so on. The withering costs of mounting a winning team would be reduced, and the box office take greatly increased in the new game. The following season fulfilled these hopes. Curiosity about the new game was high. Its freewheeling vitality captured fan interest immediately. Stadiums could not hold the numbers thronging them. Games were sold out weeks in advance. The competition for new players in the off-season was fierce. Scouts broadened their search regions, branching out to other sports. Players from the National Hockey League were especially popular. Also pro football players eager to fill out their off-season in Major League Baseball. It caused a sensation when the Houston Astros managed to snag Gus Griswold from the WWE. That's the World Wrestling Entertainment Company. Griswold was also known as 4G, referring to his nickname, the Grim, Gruesome, Grizzly Griswold. That enlistment soon found a match when the Minnesota Twins recruited Zelda Brockwinkle, also known as ZB, better known as ZB, world-class kickboxer, holder of the prestigious IWBA belt, that's the International Women's Boxing Association, who also overturned the gender barrier in professional baseball. Games between those two teams were top draws. Griswold and Brockwinkle provided some of the most exciting spectacle and erotically charged competition anywhere in the majors. Griswold in his gold-spangled bikini and sweaty, greased, naked upper body, and ZB in her Wonder Woman outfit. Uniforms were a thing of the past. They could sustain a rundown of 10 minutes, including rough and tumble groping. The fans loved it. The fashion of superhero players was short-lived, but various forms of gladiator dress and manner promised sustained popularity. Then followed the glory days of Bucky's revolt. It had turned into a philosophy of heroism and greatness. It went viral, so to speak, spread rapidly to other areas of culture and politics. I'll just give two examples. Siegfried Weizenbier, artistic director of the Tucson Symphony, reeling from a nasty review of his Mahler's Eighth, created a sensation by announcing a postmodernist freestyle performance of that same work, based on what he called polystylistic randomness. Weizenbier declared the liberation of music from tyrannical demands of composition. Weizenbier was immediately offered the vacant position of artistic director of the Chicago Symphony. No one paid any attention to the music critic of the Tucson, Arizona Daily Star, who declared the performance chaotic, disgusting cacophony. Second area of reform. The one-time great Russian chess master, Zbigniew Malachowski, in his second season of losses to younger men, declared the emancipation of the king, which henceforth could move in any and every pattern. The World Chess Federation has contacted Malachowski for discussions on the reform of the rules of chess. The tragic death of Buckminster Bixby made him a saint and a national monument. Bucky was a passenger in a car driven by free-range outfielder Hecatone Margate. He died instantly, and the car was struck by a driver who ran a red light. Margate suffered career-ending injuries. The driver of the other car claimed that the light was green. Confronted in court by video evidence and 21 eyewitnesses, he argued biased judgment. He also insisted that red traffic lights were an unfair restriction on individual freedom of action. He even referred to the great reforms of Bucky Bixby, evidently unaware that the victim of his individualistic driving had been none other than his hero, Bucky the Great.
All right, thank you so much for that, Stephen. All right, following the little bits of readings, I've got kind of a small little quote that I'd like to read. This hit me when I was thinking about somebody who had died and who kind of made an impact on my life. This is by Jose Quintero, who is a screenwriter and a playwright. This is from his book called If You Don't Dance, They Beat You. In the future, whenever you speak or think of this moment, you will always have to start with the sentence or thought with, I remember. And one can only remember ghosts because neither you nor I can make this moment happen again exactly as it is happening this instant. For the minutes of our lives to become ghosts, they have to die first, don't they? In order for us to reclaim them as memory. Don't be afraid of ghosts. Ghosts are light, for death has removed